to the channel. My name is Adam Smith, and today I'm excited to continue the playthrough for Dawn of Madness coming from Dimension Games. If you haven't checked out the game unboxing, the how to set up video, and part number 1, you're going to want to do so to understand where we're currently at. I'll put a link to all that, the showcase, in the top right hand corner right now. In the prior video, Catherine was stuck in the greenhouse and she needs to continue to work to try to get out of it. And the plant 4 is going to be her option to do so. She's the only one that can interact with that particular encounter. She's going to continue to do so to try to get out of the greenhouse. And over on the other side of the game board, we have Claude, who's currently at the homestead having 2 different encounters to choose between, but he has to be infected in order to even do the top one, as we talked about, or Catherine could come over and try to interact with that, or we could just decide to have Claude go down here and interact with his bottom encounter, the boy in the basement. During the Wanderer stage, we have a number of rounds to go through, and our main objectives are as follows. First, we need to take down the Abomination. Currently, it has 7 damage on it. It has 24 total health, so we have a ways to go there. We also have to keep in mind down here, the passive says when a Wanderer dies, Frenzy's going to restore 3 health, so we want to make sure nobody is going to die. That is probably going to be tougher than it sounds. Meanwhile, on the right-hand side of the game board, we have a number of story-ending tracks. We have A, B, and C, and for this particular story for Catherine, we don't have to worry about D, as it will unlock as part of finding the endings for A, B, and C, but we want to progress these markers and continue moving through the story. We did a number in the B ending, but not so much on A and C in part number 1. Let's dive into round number 2, and the first thing we need to do is enter the events phase. We're going to take a look at the event for round 2, which is going to be entry 20, and again, because I'm playing with the story mode, I'm going into the PDF for story mode to read that entry rather than in Catherine Little's booklet. Entry 20 in story mode is telling us to do 3 different things. The first is to check the spawning conditions on each unspawned encounter card's back. We'll do that in a second. Secondly, spawn the terror symptom Contagion and a random terror from the terror deck on different world shards. We have more monsters coming into the fray, and then we go to entry 176. Let's check the spawning conditions for the encounter cards with something on their back and see if any of these actually need to be spawned. Now, some of them are getting close. It says, if the Wanderers have the coda card, the boy in the basement, spawn this encounter on the basement. We currently don't have that specific coda card. The only coda card we have is currently on Claude, and it's called Fungus Boy. We'll continue onwards. This one says, blue consequence tokens. We know we don't have that yet. If Wanderers have the coda card, the egg, and 1 red. This gets into details here. More things going to happen again. This won't happen right now, so that's good. This one here, her ailment. If we happen to have that coda card, then we're going to have another spawn in the basement. The basement seems to be a pretty wild spot. Looks like Claude is in a real nasty place. And another one here for consequence tokens, which can come out a number of different ways. So we're going to put all these to side for now because none of them actually trigger at this moment. We're now told to spawn the symptom Contagion. This is going to be one of the story-based monsters we're going to be going up against. So I've got the miniature right here. If you wish, you can pause the screen or to read the narrative about this enemy. And here's a look at the back side of the card, which will activate in the future, but first we need to place those Chaos Rift tokens down. So we'll go ahead and draw 3 tokens out of the bag. We got 2 right here. We can place this one here, hand, an eye, and the third is going to be a skull. We'll now roll the Otherworld die to find out exactly where this monster is going to go. It appears Claude is going to have some action not too far away from where he currently stands. Contagion's mental capacity is 5, so we'll place the tracker on the 5th position of the track. The random terror coming into the game is Whisper. The miniature's been pulled, and you can also pause the screen to read the narrative around this monster if you wish. Let's go ahead and draw some Rift tokens out of the bag and see what we get. We have a hand. Next, we have another hand, actually the exact same color, and then a brain. Now for the Otherworld die to tell us where Whisper is going to land, 13. The monsters seem to be saying to the outside edges of the game board for now. At the very top right, we have Whisper up there at the art gallery. Both new monsters come in at mental capacity number 5, which is great because it's under our Wanderers, but we still have the wonderful Abomination at the very start of this thing. Now that's going to do it for all the spawning as per entry 20 in the storybook, but we still need to go to entry 176 and read some narrative. Entry 176 is known as an exploration and it's called the Globe. The dark chamber engulfs you, swallowing you whole. Perhaps it's a cavern. You can't see much apart from a faint glow overhead and a weak light in the distance. With no other obvious direction, you head toward the illumination up ahead. At last, you reach the bright oasis and jolt in confusion. You see a strange, brilliant orb settled amidst the black emptiness. It's a little shorter than you are, yet you still discern trees, grass, dirt, and blue sky within it. The sphere peers into another world like a snow globe, only so much bigger and filled with living things. And what's more, the little girl you met before crouches in its center. "Hey," you cry, reaching toward the child. Your hands press against a solid membranous barrier, the globe's edge. "Can you hear me?" The girl doesn't respond. Instead, she crouches above the dirt and draws in it with a stick, undisturbed. You're not the only person she doesn't see either. She also fails to notice the shambling young woman with the long knife gripped tightly in her hand. The lady looks sickly and drawn, her eyes submerged in dark pools of regret. Her clothing is ragged and dirty, showcasing the bony limbs beneath a threadbare fabric. What's most striking, though, is her uncanny resemblance to the girl. Well, that and the vicious, enraged snarl that progressively twists her thin lips the closer she draws to the child. "Hey," you scream at the girl, "watch out!" She still doesn't notice you, or the woman drawing steadily closer to her. Why doesn't she hear you? Is the divide that thick? Are you not actually speaking at all? You have something to do now. It says the woman is on top of her. We have to try and alert the girl about the attacker. Every living wanderer must test every sentience for 3 total skulls each. If half or more of the living wanderers succeed, we get to go to entry 7. If less than half succeed, we proceed to entry 111. So we're making a roll here, and we're going to start with Catherine. She's going to roll all of her sentience dice, and nothing has changed on her sheet for her. And again, you're always referencing the sheet off to the side, but for me, because I know all the sentience values are the same, I can just reference the dashboard. That won't be the same for Claude, who actually has had an impact thanks to a coda card. We'll talk about that in a second. So here are the dice we're rolling, and we're going to see if we can actually pull off getting multiple skulls here, because that is what we are looking for. So let's see how we do off the roll. Hopefully we see lots of skulls and or wilds. And that, my friends, is how you roll dice when you're looking for skulls. Now you know. So we have 2 wanderers here. We only need to have one of the wanderers get 3 skulls or more, basically 50%. That's all we need in order to move on to the positive, I assume, entry of this situation. If we had failed, I'm assuming it would have gone bad. Maybe both will be bad. We'll see. There is no guaranteed good path in this game, so we'll see how this pans out. Finally, the girl seems to notice your presence. Standing to her feet, she turns and faces you, seeming perplexed at first, then unbearably sad. It's almost like she knows what's coming, and there's nothing she or you can do about it. Yet there's also something else, an uncanny resilience and steely will to live. It's almost as though she is trying to convey that, even if this is her end. It is not the end. You resonate deeply with her defiance. The other woman reaches her, the knife descending. The little girl crumples to the ground as the encapsulated oasis pops like a bubble. You stand alone in the dark, feeling powerless and shaken. Was it all for nothing? The storybook tells us that ending C has increased by 1, so we'll go ahead and mark that on the track. Next, it tells us that the wanderers that succeeded at the roll test are going to get 1 existence token. So this is actually a good learning experience for people out there. Even if you happen to pass the check as it's written with just 1 wanderer, like I was able to do, make sure you still roll for all wanderers, because the outcome of whatever you're doing, whether it's positive or negative, can come back to the wanderers specifically in terms of whether they passed or failed. And that's going to actually matter. So we have to roll for this just to see whether he would have passed it or not, so we know whether he actually gets an existence token along with Catherine's. Let's see how he does. He's got a different allotment of dice, you might notice, than his original inside area here, because thanks to the coda card here, it manipulated his stats a little bit. So he's got a +1 on the green and a -1 on the yellow, which means he has no yellow dice. So he only has 3 red, he has 3 blue, and now he has 2 green. So we'll go ahead and make a roll and see how we do. Hopefully we get lots of skull results. That'll be helpful. And he absolutely nailed it. 3 right on the money. The one die that was just up north here was a skull. Just trust me, it actually was. And it was one of the blue ones. So that's pretty awesome. He got 2 right here, 1 there. That's the 3. So he will get an existence token. So Claude has 3 existence tokens and Catherine has 2, which is great. We're getting to the point now we can really start digging into the decks here to find some really cool cards to unlock. But you also have to remember existence tokens can be used in other ways as well. Like when damage is coming at you, you can spend on a 1-for-1 basis an existence token to negate one of the damages and stuff like that. So having those to the side is very nice. The other benefit is the game might actually tell you to discard an existence token as a result of something happening. And if you don't have one to discard, you lose health instead. So there's all those angles you have to think about when actually spending existence tokens. The next thing that's happening is every uninfected wanderer besides Catherine, so it's only going to be Claude in this case, rolls the otherworld die. The wanderer with the lowest result gains an infected coda card and becomes infected, and you re-roll the die to break any ties. Well, that just means it's guaranteed that Claude is getting this infected card. We don't even have to roll. This is an instance where rolling doesn't make any sense. So Claude has a new infected coda card here. This one has a +1 for red, and the default he's got on his sheet even is 3 for red. So he's going to have an increase of 1. So on the sheet, we'll be scratching off the 3, and we'll be adding an additional 1 to it for a total of 4. And it does state here that while he's got this card, he's considered an infected wanderer, which actually opens up one of the pathways at the homestead he couldn't interact with before, Paw and the radio. Now, it's also worth seeing that when you flip over the coda card, similar to the Fungus Boy in terms of using this to basically enhance things in the future when you're looking for additional rolls and things like that, the infected card is not going to provide any benefit whatsoever. This is purely a bad thing. I'm assuming based on the story, there might be a positive to it, maybe because it allows you to interact with these encounters you wouldn't otherwise be able to, but whether that's a good or bad thing is unknown at this point. The events phase is all wrapped up. We're now moving to the actions phase. We start at the top of the mental capacity track. It is going to be the abomination. Now, just to recap, in part number 1, I was actively trying to move through this encounter here, which basically was a result of multiple failures on my part to get Catherine out of this greenhouse. And because of that, she's stuck in this place, and the abomination is bearing down her only 1 space away. So we're going to go ahead and activate the abomination. We'll take a look at the very top, and the first activation of every round, which is going to be right now. This is the first activation for the abomination. The wanderers with the most envenom cards are going to lose a health. Well, unfortunately, that is going to be Catherine, so she's going to take that health hit. Now, here's where I could potentially use one of the existence tokens in order to negate one of the damage coming at her. Now, the fun part is, do I want to hold on to it to potentially purchase a card? That is the question. I'm going to choose to have that damage go straight through to Catherine and not use an existence token to negate it, although I could. I'm going to hold on to them because I think I might want to pick up a card in the future. Now, we're going to continue onwards here. So this is for the first activation of every round, and technically that would be the end of that one right now, but it doesn't cost any mental capacity for the abomination to do that, which means when it's done, which it would be right now, it goes back to the mental capacity track to see who's at the top, and guess what? The abomination never moved down the track, so guess what's happening? The abomination is activating again. It will not do this again because it only happens on the first activation, jumps down to the second one here, no wanderer in its space. It's going to use up 3 mental capacity to be able to move up to 2 spaces toward the wanderer with the most venom cards, which is definitely Catherine. If it ends in the wanderer's space, then immediately check the action below, which has it going to the confrontation card. I've already dropped the abomination by 3 on the mental capacity track, so it's down to 6, but it moved on down to this and through to this, which means it's going to spend another 3 mental capacity, dropping it from 6 down to 3. And it states here, a wanderer in a frenzy space. Frenzy is going to deal damage to a wanderer in its space, 3. The targeted wanderer then gains the envenom card, so another one coming to Catherine. Now, there is something worth clarifying that we have not seen to this point. It's a great time to talk about this. So first off, the abomination threw a damage at us that didn't have any sentience color attached to it. In other words, when that damage is coming over, we cannot use our eye domain in any way, shape, or form to make a defensive roll to try to block that damage. The only thing I could have used at that point in time, based on what I have for Catherine, is just the existence token if I chose to use to defend against that 1 damage. But typically, when you have damage coming at you, you will typically see a sentience color attached to it. And if you do, you can then go to your eye domain and you can actually make a defensive roll against that sentience color in order to try to stop some of the damage from hitting your character. So how does a defensive test work? Well, first off, we'll take a look at our sheet typically to see how much we're rolling for green, because that is exactly the type of damage that's coming at us. Again, her values haven't changed, so I can still look at this center area here, and it's 2. So we're going to be rolling 2 green dice during this defensive test, and what we are trying to see on the roll is as many of these eye symbols as possible. They will stand in for a single defense against one of the green damage that's coming at us. So if we can get 2 eyes on this, we can block 2 of the damage. And then the third one that's coming through, we could even go ahead and spend this green domain, or sentience marker, I should say, in the eye domain in order to count for that third one. So we could defend the entire 3 if we get really lucky. And of course, as always, the sphere value on the dice can also be a stand-in for any icon. So in other words, you get some of those spheres, you can use them as eyes to use for your defense. So let's go ahead and see what we get off of this, and let's hope we get some wilds or eye symbols to defend against this. We got ourselves one eye, and this one here, if I'm not mistaken, is that the brain? I always wonder about this one. This one always throws me. Yeah, it is the brain. So that is not going to work on that front, but we do have one here. We could choose to use this one. I'm going to go ahead and do it so that we're only going to end up taking 1 damage. So in the worst case scenario, 3 damage would have come through. She already had 1. That would have been 4, more than half her health. That would not have been good. So thank goodness we were able to make that defensive roll. So anytime you see a sentience color attached to damage being shot at you, always think about that eye domain and making that defensive roll. It's very easy to forget that. The Abomination's turn is done. A new confrontation card placed on top, and worth mentioning, a total of 6 mental capacity spent, from 9 down to 3. So we have others to deal with activating at this point. And that other individual is going to be Catherine, who really wants to get out of the greenhouse at this point, seeing as not only is the encounter making her stress out, but also the Abomination being present is not a good thing. Now you might notice there's a new token on top of Catherine, and that's a trap token. This should have been placed in part number 1. I forgot to place it on there, but in terms of how the trap condition work, I've been playing it correctly. Basically, every action that Catherine takes needs to be taken inside the encounter. So in other words, you're trying to progress that encounter you're trapped in until it is resolved, and you're now untrapped. And at that point, you can then attack the Abomination that happens to be in your space, or maybe run away. As of right now, you might think, before I put that token there, that you could have taken a swipe at the Abomination or maybe just run away. You can't. You have to get out of that situation first, that story. You got to push that forward and get out of it before you can do anything else. I'm going to choose to take a free support action to do the encounter, the Plant 4. I'll grow her, the man whispers. I'll bring her back. Please, please let me out, the girl cries. I don't want to die in here. Please don't let me die in here. Thorns rip at your clothing as spores erupt into the air from splitting fungi and spitting flowers. You certainly hope they're not ejecting anything that should cause you to worry. Something like a fruit bursts, soaking your arm in sticky, sweet-smelling juice. It burns your skin, making you grit your teeth. It tells us that what's going on does cause a health damage to Catherine. So again, we could choose to spend an existence token to gate this, or I could be crazy and take it and hope that things don't continue down this dark, dark path. I'm going to continue to press on, not use existence tokens, so a damage. We have 3 now on Catherine, and it states, perhaps she was a plant all along, the man murmurs. She just never knew it. But no, that can't be right. She was too warm. The girl screams. No, she cries. Please, stop. Ah. The man is weeping now. Don't you worry, he murmurs. This isn't the end. I'll fix you, I promise. The young woman's voice falls silent, but the man continues. We both knew this thing was special, didn't we? He says. A miracle, and now I'm going to prove how truly miraculous it is. Based on the narrative, this is not going in the direction that I want it to go. We're going to move this thing up by 1 as it states. Catherine's going to gain another yellow sentience in the brain domain. The narrative is now telling us to make a test. We are still considered trapped. We're looking for 4 spheres. If you remember from part number 1, we failed multiple times, and this requirement has been dropping by 1 each time. I'm guessing it's leading to a very bad outcome if we do not get this roll. So let's continue to push. We do have the ability to make a reroll on yellow if we need, and we do have 1 here in the sphere category we could use if we need to as well. But that is pretty much it, or we could have Claude basically add in if he needs to. But it really hinges on what this roll provides for us as to whether or not it's basically worth the risk to gamble more in the pool. So let's see if we can get a lot of spheres here. That's what I'm hoping to see. Now this, my friends, is very risky. So we have 2 right here, which is good. We have another one here. And the other thing we could do is we could use this sentience marker here to reroll one of the yellows, because I wouldn't want to reroll the one that's already good. But it'd be a 1 in 6 shot. I could also technically have Claude. Does he have he doesn't have any. He has no sentience markers inside his skull area, which means he cannot add any dice into this roll either. So really, I'd be basically just banking on this reroll panning out. And that is the only thing. It's a 1 in 6 shot. I mean, I could try it. I feel like this is not the best way to use this, but I do really want to give it a shot, because what if it actually happens? So let's go ahead and do it. I don't think I'm overly confident with this, but wouldn't that be cool? Let's go ahead and roll the die. Come on. Where is a sphere? That's what I want to see. Oh, an eye. And as we were unsuccessful, we go ahead and exchange out the plant 4 for the plant 5 encounter card, which I've already gone ahead and done. At this point, that's going to end off the entry, and we're going to go back to the top of the mental capacity track, and Catherine is still at the very top because, again, she used a supportive action to do this. Now, something else I can do here, which is very beneficial, is remember all those yellow sentience markers that this encounter has been providing us over time inside of the brain domain? Well, you can actually use those in the brain domain to actually take away the requirement of mental capacity for doing an encounter. The brain domain is very cool in terms of which sentience colors are in this domain spot. I have a lot of yellow because the current encounter I'm struggling with continues to present me with yellow ones, and it's doing it on purpose because it's really what it's doing is it's saying, hey, you didn't do so well, but we'll give you a little bit of a cost reduction to try again. I haven't made use of it yet. I've accumulated a few, but I'm actually going to make use of it now to keep my mental capacity track high so that those other terrors that are on the game board don't get to activate too early before I get out of this situation. So I'm going to go ahead and use 2 of these to cover the 2 cost of an encounter action that it would typically take. Now, just as a review of what other sentience markers in here can do, if they're green, you can actually use them to reduce the cost of a move action. If it happens to be red, attack or confrontation actions can be reduced in cost. If it's blue sentience markers, domain or search actions can be reduced. If it's yellow, well, you just saw that, encounters or component actions can be reduced. And if it's a purple, then any type of action you choose can be reduced in cost. We dive right into entry 32, called the Plant 5. It says, the alien plant life wraps around your limbs, stomach, and neck. A tendril slithers up your nose and then worms down your throat, making you gag. You take another step forward using every ounce of willpower left in your body. Then your foot comes down on something that pops. You scream. Your whole leg feels like it's on fire. At this point, we're supposed to lose 1 health. Enough's enough. I think at this point, based on how bad Catherine has done inside these encounters trying to escape it, I'm going to use an existence token to negate that damage coming at her to try to keep her above half health. Patience, patience, the man says. You can't get too hard on yourself yet. It's not like anyone else has ever done this before. You rip at the tendrils and vines until you finally get an arm free. Then reaching up, you pull the wriggling vine out of your nostril, almost vomiting as it slides back up your esophagus. Producing a knife, you hack at the remaining stalks until they release you. Of course, the man exclaims. Life always starts from an egg or a seed, so why should this time be any different? So much squirming vegetation now chokes the hull that moving forward is almost impossible. If you don't reach the end soon, you fear you won't at all. This sounds bad. We have a couple bullet points here. It says ending B is going to increase by 1. So that'll jump B's ending up to 5. And get this, it actually tells us that Catherine's going to gain an existence token. So we actually get back the one we used prior in order to help us with some damage. So that's actually not a bad thing. And then we get a yellow sentience marker, which sits in the brain domain. You guys already know what's coming. We're still trapped. We're still in the greenhouse. We need to succeed at getting 3 spheres this time to pass the test. Got my dice in hand. Let's make a roll and hope for the best, because at this point, hope, I think, is all we got left. Finally, we succeeded at that particular check. It took forever, but we got it on the roll. And it's a good thing we succeeded at plant number 5's encounter, because if we hadn't, it tells us to continue trying to pass it and losing a health every single time you fail. So you can actually fail yourself right into a death. But in this case, we did pass it finally at the very, very last second. So we placed the new encounter card here, the egg. Now, I do want to touch on one thing that I missed way back. Remember when I did that defensive roll for Catherine? This was a while back, and I used 2 green dice. Well, keep an eye on your conditions for your envenom cards, because in this case, I actually should have been rolling 1 less green die when I made that roll, and I succeeded on 1 and defended, and the other one was a fail. So we'll just say, seeing as it's so far along, that that one was the one that failed. But going forward, I'll be keeping an eye on this, because these really mess with those defensive tests, and I was actually waiting until that first defensive test to actually talk about these cards, but then forgot to actually mention them. Now, something else that actually happened was I got one of the new envenom cards, as I mentioned a little bit back. This is the new one that I got, and it says roll 1 less red and purple die each during a defensive test. So really, these envenom cards are really messing with your ability to defend yourself, which is not good. And again, these conditions for this particular card really only going to have an impact when sentience color damage is coming your way. That's the end of Catherine's turn, but looking at the mental capacity track, which is off screen, she's still way at the very top with 8 and really wants to continue progressing things. I have a couple options here. I could go back to using a support card because I just recently spent some of these sentience markers in between using another support action prior to that, or I could just go ahead right now and spend these 2 to do another encounter action, which I'm going to do, and I'll hold on to that support card for another use in the future, because remember, those support cards have multiple different actions you can potentially take with them, so you want to make sure you use them at key moments and for the right things when you need them strategically. This entry is called The Egg. It says, just as you begin wondering if these plants will eat you alive, the hallway opens to reveal yet another greenhouse. The same wild foliage already coats nearly every surface in this place, blocking most of the light filtering through the ceiling and walls. More milky tendrils weave and wave around you, seeming to sprout from every surface. This place is stunningly beautiful and strangely unsettling at the same instant. It's almost terrifying. In the center of the room, you see a large pedestal made of plants, and on it sits an ominous pearlescent white orb. Or perhaps it's one giant thick stalk, and the shimmering sphere perched atop its mammoth leaves is its fruit. Something moves inside the softly glowing globe. You gasp. Is there a living being inside there? As you watch, a delicate hand presses against the sphere's interior lining, deforming it momentarily as the fingers push outwards. It says we feel a strange connection with the orb. We can try to strengthen it. We can test red for 2 skulls. If we succeed, we gain 2 existence, which is awesome. If we fail, we gain 1 overwrought card. Let's go ahead with our roll. We got 2 dice for Catherine with red. Let's hope to see 2 skull results. Poor Catherine gets the overwrought card. Let's see exactly what it states on the back in terms of what this is going to do to her. It says your existence cards are going to cost an increase of 1 now. That is not good. It's time, someone says, startling you. Ripping your eyes off the orb, you see a lean, tall man disrobing as he steps towards the room's center. Blisters and bruises ravage his skin. I know you're in there, he continues. I hope you can hear me, but I guess it doesn't matter either way. I should have realized sooner it would take sacrifice. This time it'll work. I know it. This time you'll come back. I just wish I'd be here to see it. Walking up to the sphere, he wraps his arms around it and presses his cheek to the side. I offer myself as a bridge, he says. Take me, become her, drown this world in your green splendor. As he finishes saying that, green and white tendrils lash out from the plants and pierce his skin, jerking him backward as they harpoon his flesh. The man emits a keen yelp of pain before the tentacles whip him back against the globe's surface. He looks at you, then it almost seems like he truly sees you. He bares his teeth in overwhelming pain, and then his flesh melts into the side of the orb. His skin bubbles away, revealing red meat and then white bone. The vines continue pushing him into the sphere until it completely consumes him. Once the man is gone, an eerie silence descends over the greenhouse. You glance left and right, wondering if you should search for a way out of this place before the plants demand another sacrifice. Before you can make your escape, though, the orb gives a great shudder. You stand there, holding your breath as it fluctuates again, and then it rips. At last, you realize what the pearlescent sphere truly is. It's an egg. An iridescent, milky fluid seeps out of it as its sides slowly fold away like a blossoming flower. Then a trembling hand grips the leathery shell's ragged edge as a slime-coated naked young woman pulls herself up. The girl crawls to the edge of the egg shell and retches out a thick white fluid. Then her eyes focus on you. Maybe you're imagining it, but there seems to be something otherworldly in her stare, something inhuman. Ending B now increases by 2, so we jump this all the way up to 7. Catherine is also considered to no longer be trapped. Catherine is now free. She gains an existence token for a total of 3. She also gains 2 coda cards, one for sure, which is the egg. The other, the gardener's journal, she gains if she hasn't already gained it to this point. And those coda cards provide changes to her sheet, which she has updated, so her red has dropped down by 1, green's gone up by 1, and her purple's gone up by 1. This is an important part of the story for Catherine. At this point, it tells us to unlock Catherine's existence card, Snatched from Death. The wonder Catherine immediately acquires it for free. This is the very first secret card unlocked for Catherine in this play to this point. It says Snatched from Death. Before resolving the death effect, when you die, immediately restore the same amount of health and mental capacity as your current existence if able. After that, remove this card from the game. So basically, this can actually pull her away from dying based on having existence tokens up here. So another reason to actually hold on to them, and a very cool way to see how these tokens are also used in different ways through gameplay as you go. We're now told to spawn the Gardener's Journal June 4th on the greenhouse. The egg encounter card is removed. Now we have a test to perform to end off this large entry for the egg. It says the Wanderer Catherine must test her purple for 3 spheres. If she succeeds, you get to return to the game. If you fail or wish to skip the test, she must immediately turn to entry 139. Now the good news in this situation is that the recent coda card she got bumped up her purple for rolling, so she's got a total of 4 dice to roll, and she also has 1 of the purple sentience markers in the sphere domain, which means she can use one of those as a success. So basically, she's got to get 3 to pass this. She's got 1 already guaranteed, so we just need to get 2 from the dice alone. So here's hoping we can find it. Here we go. Catherine's able to pass the test, 2 off the dice, and 1 coming from the sentience marker sitting in her sphere domain is enough to get the 3 she needs to pass it. So we'll never know what happens with that other entry, but my guess is, based on the fact we got that Snatch from Death card, it probably wouldn't have been good, but I'm not certain of that. I've never seen it, so I have no idea, and you'll be able to discover it, hopefully, and it's not too bad for you. At this point, we take a look at the mental capacity track, which is off screen, but Catherine still sits where she was at the very beginning of the round because she smartly used a number of different ways to interact with the encounter to get out of it. She's no longer trapped. Let's get her on the move. She wants to move 3 positions. We'll spend 3 mental capacity to do so. Based on the fact that Catherine seems to be intertwined with a number of these gardens and greenhouses and things of that nature, maybe sending her to the Sacred Garden is a good idea. Could be a bad one, but we've moved 3, so 1, 2, and 3, and there are connection points as long as there are those connections between different locations you can go. So we've gone all the way across over here, keeping her far away from the abomination. That's going to do it for Catherine. That drops her down to where the 2 terrors are that just recently came into the game, but Claude is going next. Now, even though just to the north, Whisper is there, looking at Whisper's card, all that Whisper will do is move 1 space toward the nearest Wanderer, and it's not going to activate the bottom portion of that same block to do anything further to the Wanderer if it gets there. So I'm safe to kind of stay here with Claude and maybe interact with one of these encounters and find out what's going on. Now, he is infected as a condition, so he can now actually take on this paw and the radio one if he wants to. So he's going to check out entry 136. This is going to cost him 2 in order to do so. Bookshelves line the walls, wicker chairs dot the floor, and large picture windows splash light across threadbare throw rugs. Plants have wriggled in through broken glass panes and the cracks in the walls, though the space is still much more serviceable than the sunroom. Walking over to the left side of the room, you sit down in front of the wooden desk, pressed to the wall, and turn on the tall, rounded cathedral radio sitting on it. The cloth-covered speaker slits emit a static-laced whine as you twist the knobs. A signal is beginning to come through. "Kathy, turn that blasted thing off," a voice says behind you. "You know I can't stand its warbling." You glance back over your shoulder at the rocker near the opposite wall. "I don't think you get much of a say anymore, Pa," you say. "Seeing as I'm carrying the most of the weight around here nowadays, and it's not like you're going to jump up and do anything about it." Your father sits in a rocking chair pressed against the wall behind you. His legs still clamp the shotgun stock between them, the end of the barrel leaning against his shoulder. The back of his skull reminds you of a gaping exotic lily. The wall behind his head looks like a splattered eruption of flowers and foliage. More leaves and vines fill his brain pan like a planter, drizzling down through his mouth onto his chest. "Please, Kathy," your dad murmurs. "My ears are ringing. Something awful right now. I can't stomach the radio's noises on top of that." Sighing, you look back at your father. So many conflicting emotions flood you as you look at him. You're honestly not sure how to feel. We're told to try and feel something for our father. We're going to test the yellow sentience for 2 brain icons. If you succeed, you get to go to a certain entry. If we fail or wish to skip the test completely, we can proceed to a different entry. By default, Claude does not have any dice to roll, but others could help him. He could potentially push to try to succeed, but I'm going to hold off on it and hope for a usage of his stuff a little bit better down the line. So we're going to go right to entry 239 as we can skip the test altogether if we choose to, and it states, "You try to muster up some feelings for your father, but you just can't. Why is that, do you think? Well, it's not like any of this matters anyhow." "I see no reason why I shouldn't listen to this right now, Pa," you say matter-of-factly. "I don't see how it's my fault you're stuck here." Your father winces as you turn up the volume on the radio. You don't pay him any further mind, though. With just a bit more fiddling, you get your favorite station in loud and clear. The meat swells and fills every orifice, spilling down into the gutters and the cesspools, the radio personality announces happily. The plant responds in kind, spoiling the meat with its spores, tainting everything green, making the reds swell, bulge, and grow. They squirm in their symbiosis, writhing as they become something other than what they were. There is no hope. We are all diseases. I feel it rising, bulging in my throat, burbling upwards, and now here's a word from our sponsors. Feeling tuckered out from country life, the advertisement asks? Tired of all the menial chores and daily churn of existence? Then why not take a trip to the city and relax? Visit gorgeous Emerald Hill, the wondrous city of dreams, today and let all your cares drain away. You smile as you close your eyes and just for a moment imagine the magnificent city. Someday you will go there and you don't think you'll ever come back. Turning off the radio, you unplug it and haul it upstairs to your room. Maybe that will shut your paw up. You barely notice the twitching. Flowing meat seep over the windowsills or ooze through the house's cracks. However, you do feel the world fluctuate and sizzle around you as you reach the top of the stairs. The hairs stand up on the nape of your neck. It's coming. We're told to increase the ending A by 1, which I'll do right now, and this is actually going to have all 3 tracks now finally progressed at least 1 space, if not many more beyond 1, and we're trying to get to the end of all 3 of these, A, B, and C, so that we can find how to unlock D. Claude unlocks the coda card His Remains, which gives him a +1 on purple and a -1 on yellow, and an existence token. The coda card is going to change his values once again. He's going to gain 1 for the very first time in purple, but he's actually going into the negatives for the yellow, and yes, you even mark when going into the negatives in this game on this sheet. The encounter card for Paw and the radio is now removed from the game. Now, as this was a reality shard in green encounter, it's going to tell us to make a test with Catherine as she is the central wanderer. Catherine's rolling 4 purple dice. She's looking for 3 spheres. Let's see if we can actually pull this off. And unfortunately, we did not succeed in the end. The hallway before you crackles with otherworldly energy. Glancing back, you watch as a pool of blackness swallows the stairwell, moving steadily, implicably toward you. You sigh deeply, then turn and continue walking toward your bedroom. Stepping through the door, you set the radio on your nightstand beside the bed. Then you stand there with your head lowered and wait. Something enormous steps into the room behind you. You hear the thud of its feet echo off the walls. The floorboards squeal as they strain beneath its massive weight. You also make out the sound of its long blades dragging on the ground, grinding against the wood, and its leathery wings grating against the door frame. It smells of fetid meat. You just won't give me a minute's peace, will you? You ask. The dreams are all I have now. They're what get me through. Without them, there's no hope left in this place. The thing doesn't reply. It just moves closer. You can hear its breath whizzing in and out of its melted face as the air fills with the buzzing of flies and mosquitoes. Even if I give up every hope, dream, or love I have, it wouldn't be enough for you, would it? You say. You'd still hate me just as much. Hate us. No reply comes from the shambling shuffle of its feet and the moaning of the boards. You just can't accept this, can you? You ask, sighing. I guess I kinda understand, but still, I wish you weren't so harsh on us. It's standing directly behind you now. Your body begins to tremble. You find you still can't force yourself to turn around. The flies dart around your face as the room fluctuates like a fever dream that can't keep its shape. Finally, you hear the monstrosity raise one of its terrible blades. Do what you're gonna do, you say. I won't try to escape, but I hope you'll realize someday this isn't the way to fix us. The massive blade drops, its razor-edged bulk whistling through the air. You jolt, your eyes blinking in surprise. Your arm shakes as you bring it to the wound running across your midsection. Well, look at that. Your blood's got as much green in it now as it does red. Your top and bottom halves collapse separately to the floor. Then, as the world grows fuzzy around you, you see a mangled horror pivot away and stalk back toward the door. At this point, we're going to lose 2 mental capacity. The ending A is going to increase by 2, and we're placing a red consequence token on the art gallery, and we get to return to the game. Storyline A is going to increase by 2, jumping it up to A3. I was told to place a red consequence token on the art gallery, which I've done now. These are double-sided, these consequence tokens. The other side has blue on it. And of course, as you interact with things during the game, it might relate back to the consequence tokens, which are already on world shards or encounter cards. And that will potentially have impacts as to different paths in the story or different outcomes that might come towards you. So interesting that the story is constantly changing, constantly evolving, and you're going to be stepping in decisions you've made in the past, in the future, and also those ripple effects are going to catch up with you as you go through gameplay. Now, by this point of gameplay, you've seen a large majority of what you need to know in order to enjoy the experience of Dawn of Madness from Dimension Games. As you go through the game rounds trying to take down the Abomination, trying to increase those ending tracks on the right-hand side for A, B, and C, to try and unlock D to progress to the very end, you're going to go through a number of different stories. They're going to open up all kinds of new learnings about what's going on in this world, ripple effects that are going to cascade through the gameplay, and different horrors that are going to come after you as you try to battle your way through this one. There is all kinds of very cool mitigation tactics and strategy in this to try to get around some of the things that are being thrown at you at all times as you go through this game. It's been a blast to play on and off camera. I'm really excited for future content in this one, and I think that this one for solo gamers is certainly one you can get lost in and experience a very well written story as you go along. As much as I'd love to continue pressing forward, unlocking new secrets, showing you different outcomes of encounters, battling different enemies that are coming at me, and pushing further into the story, I do want to keep the spoilers to a minimum here because this game really does dig into an epic story that you're going to want to actually see and feel and move through on your own without it being spoiled. But I hope that this series of videos helps you get this game to the table quicker. Definitely recommend the story mode and the Chaos Rift token variant. I'm very much looking forward to continuing this play off camera to see whether Catherine and Claude can actually come out of this unscathed, although based on what I just saw from Catherine here, she's already taken quite a beating. But as you may not know, these individual characters in this game can die. They can actually die multiple times before you're completely out. And what's crazy is when your character is actually killed off, they come back as a malformation, basically kind of an alternative reality or alternative version of themselves, which will actually haunt you in the game as its own active entity in the game, and that's pretty wild. So there's a number of things that you will see as you go through this game that's going to throw all kinds of wrenches, twists, and turns at you, which honestly, for the horror genre, it can't be beat with this one. Thanks again for watching. Let me know in the comments down below what your thoughts are on Dawn of Madness as the first time you're ever seeing it, and also if you're far into it on your own already, enjoying it. Let us know what you think of Dawn of Madness as a community. We'd love to hear from you. If you're not part of the Discord community, jump in there, have conversations about the game or any other solo game out there as well. Our Facebook group is also active. You can share pictures and everything else across all these different avenues. You'll find links to all of it in the video description and pinned comment. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, keep on rolling solo.